Welcome to the OTA podcast, where we discuss everything performance training. I'm Coach Chris Barnard. Let's get into it. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the OTA podcast. I'm your host, Coach Chris Barnard. For today's video, I got a question from our friends New Light Fitness. The question is, best thing to focus on during in-season time for youth athletes? I thought this was a really good question, and I wanted to kind of break it down in a couple different ways. So from a general perspective, if you have a youth athlete, the majority or the chances of them playing multiple sports is typically pretty high. Or even if they're really into one sport, let's say it's baseball, nowadays these athletes are playing year round. So let's consider if they're multi-sport athlete or even one, they're probably playing, whether that be their season, their main season, and then they have travel ball, guest appearances, things like that. Or if they're doing AAU, right? Football is the one where they have a true in-season, and then they might be playing usually typically other sports at the youth level. So what can we focus on during that time? Now, the one thing I'll say is when it comes to youth athletes, they're pretty moldable, right? They're like Play-Doh. You can mold them. And they adapt extremely well to certain intensities. Most of these youth athletes, the intensity-wise, it's not like they're putting 300, 400 pounds on a barbell and loading it on their back. You can really, year-round at the youth level, typically focus on building up their relative and absolute strength. So even if you're in season, what we notice with our youth athletes is they're making progress, and we kind of progressively overload them, whether that be body weight through volume, whether that be, adding some level of resistance. We continue to see adaptations in strength. So we continue to see their strength go up. And I think that at that, anywhere from 6 to about 13, 14 years old, they can continue to progress. Now there's different stages, right? If you're a little bit, on the younger side, I think of the fundamentals where they're continuously getting some volume, and we can continue to increase the intensity through different means, not just load, but also to the complexity of the movement. But the biggest thing is at the end of the day, they can, through that volume, they're going to get better at the movement patterns. And then as they venture from, 6 to 8 to 9, then we're teaching them, a little bit how to train a little bit more progressive overload, as far as like, now that we've established the movements, we can introduce some resistance. And then after that, I still think that, from a global perspective, most of these athletes will adapt. They'll be able to recover, and it's not too much. So I think the biggest thing that you could focus on in season is just going to be building up their strength, right? Use a decent amount of variation. Teach them the fundamentals on your push, pull, bend, squat, lunge, right? Twist. But the other side of it is, as you do that, make sure that you're incorporating those auxiliaries in, putting them in, exposing them to different variations, add those new wrinkles into their variation of movements as they progress along. The other thing that I'll say is, what's up, coaches? Real quickly, let me go ahead and introduce you to Performance Coach U certification. Now, this is the certification / course that I put together for coaches who want to train athletes and not only get results, but also maximize profits in the private sector. The problem that I saw with a lot of these courses and certifications out there for coaches was that they provided a lot of information and not a lot of application. So I wanted to pull back the covers over 10 plus years of experience and show you the ins and outs of actually being in the trenches so that you get maximum results while also scaling your business. So if you're interested in this, go ahead and check out the link down below and you can get more information. I typically, when they're in like a true in-season as a youth athlete, what I would also say is continue to build up, through jump training. So continue to, have them jump, do variations of jump, whether that be vertical, horizontal, lateral, multi-directional. That's a huge thing. What we tend to do here is, if they're in an in-season, this is their main season, we'll actually pull back on some of our sprinting and cutting. So a lot of our different agility drills, a lot of our linear speed stuff, we might pull back, because what we typically notice is that they're doing a decent amount of that, with whether it be practice or in game. And so I try to double down on the things that they might not be doing. And that's going to be a decent amount of jumping. Now, obviously, if they're in basketball, they're going to be jumping. In most of these sports, they're going to be jumping. But I can have a little bit more tent and focus with the jumping. I can manipulate the volume. I can do things such as box jump variations, low-level plyometrics, lower limb stuff, whether that be pogos, things like that. And then really kind of start to focus on developing strength, whether that be nailing down the technique of the patterns or the movements. And then on the other side, continuously adding new wrinkles to progress those movements or adding resistance. I think that you're going to be completely safe. Obviously, it doesn't need to be all out, 100% intensity, putting them in like a goblet squat and really crushing them. But if you do give them a little bit of intensity from time to time, they're going to be completely fine. They'll recover. Like I said, the athletes at that age are pretty adaptable, and you're just going to continue to get them better and better at it. And it's laying the foundation for them. And what you'll see is actually improvements in game, in season, as they go along. So hope that helps. Real simple one today, but just wanted to make sure that I can hammer it. Make sure you keep focusing on your strength with your youth athletes from 6 to about 13, 14. And you can continue to progress them. And then when they get into the after that, say 15, 16, then that's where you start to find those windows where you can really hammer, whether that be summer or winter, where you can really focus on a block of just being able to physically develop them and start to, incorporate a little bit more of a, whether that, a little bit more, what should I say, difficulty, complexity within their programming, and really progressive overload them. This is when you start to introduce the, some of the other methods, like where they're starting to really increase the intensity, the load on the barbell. And that's where you're going to really have to kind of deload and focus on putting together a full program as far as an off season goes. Hope that helps. Hey, if you guys have any questions, whether it be business, coaching, whatever it might be, go ahead and drop them down below. I'll go ahead and answer them on this podcast. I'll talk to you guys next time.